Marty, I'm not a big sports guy. Can you explain this play to me?
Yeah, it's well, so the World Cup, actually people always think that the World Cup is just like that event, every 4 years, but there's like a tournament. The World Cup is the final tournament, what we know as the World Cup. Anyways, the around the world soccer teams are playing trying to qualify for the World Cup, and yesterday there was a game between Argentina and Canada. And Canada lost 2-0, but we're going to fight it out for third place, and if we win third place, we advance to the World Cup tournament. So it's a great story, but this is classic soccer, right? This is classic. Well, you and I call it soccer. The Europeans call it football or whatever. I mean, does something like this deserve a yellow card? Sure, it's unsportsmanlike. You don't whatever shoot the puck at a guy or kick him with a ball. But I love the wincing. I mean, like I used to
Wincing
kick
like
the
that
ball.
deserve a yellow card as well, though? Like I honestly
Yeah.
think taking a dive should get a yellow card. You should get a warning for that at
Or,
some
or
point.
or you get your yellow card canceled. They cancel each other harder. Yeah, I mean, I've kicked my kids. You play soccer with kids. I've kicked my kids harder than that accidentally. So, um, yeah,
Well,
no, good
okay, so
showing though.
but riddle me this, because you're a sports guy. So we just came out of the NHL, the finals for the Stanley Cup. It went to Game 7. It was big to do. These
Yeah,
guys came out super injured and whatnot at the end of it. They were hiding their
yeah,
injuries because they didn't
totally.
want to give it away to the other team. Is there a penalty for taking a dive in hockey? Can you get in trouble for like faking?
Yes,
Uh,
yes. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
so there you go.
yeah.
There you go.
Embellishing is a penalty in hockey. Like if somebody else hits you, checks you, and you somehow or other embellish it, it's called embellishing. You get a penalty for that. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You don't. Oh no, the soccer players and hockey players have nothing in common. I mean, uh, uh,
Well, soccer
and you.
players and politicians have a lot in common, because that's something we see here in Canada.
Yeah,
Lots of them taking dives, making big to dos out of little things all the time.
yep.
And well, I mean, there's no exception right now. I guess in fact, actually, Trudeau is trying to do the opposite. He's trying to mitigate the damage that he's taking on right now, because he's taking on a tremendous amount of damage. He's hiding from his own caucus. He's hiding from the media largely. He's going to these private events, of course, because he wants to try to bring things up and make himself look good. But
He's actually been.
he,
He's even been on some private podcasts. Maybe he'll call you. Like he's trying to soften his image and yeah, he's gone on a few private podcasts. Absolutely.
yeah, but they're
But
all
he's in
friendlies. They're all
hiding. He's
friendlies.
in your neck. He was in your neck of the woods recently. I'm sure of it. He was in your neck of the woods because he was at I call it. I feel like saying Generation Screwed, but it wasn't called Generation Screwed. It was called
Wasn't it called Generation Squeeze?
yeah, that's
Operation
what it's called. Yeah,
Generation
yeah,
Squeeze?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he would. I know he was in your neck of the woods because the land acknowledgement beforehand was acknowledging the Squamish, and I know it's
Right.
a giant region, but it's you live on unceded or ceded Squamish territory.
Well, okay, so that's the funny story, right? So Whistler, it was apparently way back in the day, it was bad juju, because there's one lake there that has an aquifer underneath. So when they went and they saw that it was draining out of both sides, they're like, no, 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 we're not settling there. But as soon as the Olympics was coming to that town, it was unceded territories. That's the way things go. But
Yeah.
Trudeau was in town, and I'll pop this video on because this is just, I mean, it's egregious. And I don't, well, I mean, there's only one way to comment on this, is to hear what he had to say first.
Sure.
Because, yeah.
One of the things that always comes up for me is the idea that, on housing, you have a whole bunch of older folks who are living in houses that are too much house for them right now, but their connection to neighborhood.
When a government employee or elsewise says that you have too much of anything,
That
I don't know. I don't
your spidey senses should go up. You should get
Yeah, they
nervous.
should.
Absolutely.
To community means that no, they don't want to move out to the suburbs or to some different city to be closer to their grandkids. They want to still live in their community's quality of life, and there is no housing that they can afford even to downsize other than staying in their big house. So where you're actually working to increase the amount of apartments or senior assisted living centers in neighborhoods where people currently live in single family homes, that's a piece that you can actually, I don't know that goes directly at the animals challenge here, but it does start to look at the kinds of things that give you a way out that will eventually shift those numbers in a meaningful way.
Shifting numbers in a meaningful way. I don't like the sound of the language that he's using with this. What do you take that, Marty?
I ask your viewers, like, go find 2-3 other clips from that little conference, and it's very scary to listen to him. I mean, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, he's given up on boomers as a demographic, as a voting chunk. It's weird, but either he's given up on boomers, or he's so confident in boomers will still vote for him that because he's attacking boomers, man. I mean, his capital gains tax and all these things, all this talk, like a fair budget. When he talks about a fair budget, he's been blunt about it. It's like boomers have had a good run, and now and
we want a piece of it.
Yeah, and he's blaming the problems that he created on boomers. And then in that meeting, he's trying to go back to his. He made a point in 2015. He said, he was targeting the youth with the marijuana legislation and stuff like that. Like, that's a big voting segment. And so right now he lost the youth. He's losing the boomers. I don't know if he's sacrificing the boomers. Whatever he's doing is bad. It's not working for him.
Well, and it's not just him. Like, this seems to be like a concerted effort from radical lefties. I mean, if you want to call them radical lefties, or I think right now we're just in a time where we have, it's not a left or right thing. It's people who respect property rights and people who are authoritarians. And the authoritarians are really coming out of the woodwork on this one. I want to share this screenshot of let's just have a look at this here. This is Floyd Marinescu. He's a well-known advocate for authoritarianism, and things like
he's a pro UBI guy, right? He's one of the guys who's totally in favor of universal basic income.
And he's saying Vancouver has an estimated 500,000 to 800,000 empty bedrooms. Yep. Forget about you own it and it's your right and it's your property. No. Here's a map of them. Darker, more empty. The more our markets are, and listen to the rhetoric here. Our markets are failing to allocate housing to severe family needs. Shifting taxes to land address this fundamentally. This is I can't stress this enough, because like Trudeau's pulling the rhetoric out of guys like this. Like, this is the direction that he's going in with this. And what is this rhetoric? Markets are failing. So what do we need instead of markets? We need government central authority. What do we need instead of property rights? We need allocation of resources. We need the central government to say to everybody, what is this? What's been said many times, socialism is the gateway drug to communism. And these guys are talking about full on communism. They're talking about usurping, and this is this is the government that had David Lametti as the justice minister, who said on television, Canadians don't ultimately have a right to property. This is the viewpoint of this government. At the end of the day, you don't have a right to your property. If we deem that we have better use for it, we can take it from you and we can use it for other means. And this is scary, especially in a case of a housing crisis and authoritarian government that is happy to trample on people's rights.
Yeah, no, it's insane how many people say, "Oh, that would never happen. That would never happen. That would never happen." Like, what?
It's happened so many times in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, like, that map shows that somebody's looking at this saying, "Hey, we could house a bunch of people that are homeless by forcing people to take them into their homes." And Trudeau said it. He keeps saying it. He said it over and over. You're a baby boomer. You bought a big house. You have a big nest egg. You don't need that big house anymore. And please sell your house.
Well,
And
it
it's going to go
needs-
from
oh,
it's
this-
going to go
it
from
drives
please
me
sell
nuts.
your house to enticing you to sell your house. The budget, like, I'm going to please sell your house. Oh, you don't want to sell your house? Okay, well then I'm going to tax the capital gains on your house and make you really consider selling your house. Like it all makes sense, right? When you see it all, like the budget that was produced 88 days ago. By the way, 88 days, and still the budget's not approved. We haven't voted. We'll get back to that. But
I got to show this though. This
okay,
is Brian
sure.
Lilly. He was reporting on this, and this goes into the next step is to tax it before they force you to take on people in your homes. This is the next step.
Private secret town hall meeting with Generation Squeeze Professor Paul Kershaw, who is a strong advocate. He calls it generational fairness, which is all the language that Trudeau uses all the time.
It's all the language that the Bolsheviks used. It's all the language that
he's the guy who
Cultural Revolution used in China.
Yeah, he's the guy who put the idea in Trudeau's head that you need to tax properties. That's the guy. That is the guy.
That's that guy.
Have now put out part of that secret town hall in a podcast, but they did not release the Q&A portion of the podcast. Now, Paul Kershaw, as I said, isn't just an advocate on this. He's someone that the Trudeau government has funded continually. Even the Public Health Agency of Canada funds this group for some reason that I don't understand. They're all about housing, and PHAC is funding them. Canada Mortgage and Housing is funding them. The government has funded Paul Kershaw to write a study on why there should be a home tax. And we know, I believe it was the 2019 election, there were a bunch of policy proposals put forward by various liberal constituency associations. And the number one, or one of the top ones, was a primary residence home tax. And the longer you kept your home, the smaller the tax would be. But if you sold it within 2 years, you might pay a 15% tax, and things like that. So they keep coming back to this idea, and then they say they're not going to do it. I think they're looking at it again. I think that Trudeau's language lines up with it, and this is something that would be incredibly unpopular.
Absolutely, it would be incredibly unpopular.
And the language he uses, like as an I remember last year they kept saying, like, because it came up last year, right? Are you thinking of taxing capital gains at 50% kind of thing? And he'd say, no, I'm not thinking of taxing capital gains on houses at 50%. That's how he'd say it, which meant
oddly specific, right?
You're leaving 51, 52, 53, whatever number what might be, could be 49.
67's the number they landed on. That's incredible.
Exactly. It is. Yeah. So he there was another survey today, but it's backfiring on him, because there was another survey. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but Canadians were asked, like, do you want more taxes or lower spending? And finally, Canadians are like, lower the spending, right? Because Trudeau always says, I need to tax more because the services we provide are costly. But Canadians are waking up to the fact that you're providing bullshit services, you're providing them inefficiently, you're providing unnecessary services, and you're taxing us to death to provide those services. So enough is enough is enough. Like, people are tired of paying taxes so that the Canadian military can put tampons in men's bathrooms. Like, that's not what I pay taxes for.
Well, that's absolutely right. And I think here's a great point that Franco Terrazzano of the Taxpayers Federation brought up recently. Let me just pull up the clip here. This is a great point, because it's all about why are we cutting, we're talking about going after the big wealthiest people in Canada. Why is it that we're also subsidizing them?
Welcome to Canada, folks, where you pay a federal interest, or you pay a federal sales tax just to cover the interest charges on the Trudeau government credit card. But here's another element of this, right? Like, the government is claiming that they want the so-called rich to pay more. Well, if you want the rich to pay more, how about you just make rich multinational corporations pay for their own factories, right? The tens of billions of dollars that the federal government has given to the boardrooms of Germany and Japan, right? The billions of dollars to Volkswagen, Stellantis, you got Northvolt, you got Honda. In fact, I believe it was 2022, the federal government spent like $11 billion on corporate welfare, which is more money than what they're going to be bringing in this year in the capital gains tax hike. Welcome to Canada, folks.
Corporate welfare is the name of the game. That's absolutely what's going on here. And it's at the expense of the middle class. Like, the middle class is the ones that are paying for this. It's the baby boomer generation that they're trying to generationally squeeze to get they're trying to get any blood from this stone that they possibly can. And at the end of the day, what's it going to do? The Laffer curve's going to kick in. They make it a short windfall by surprise taxing so many people on their properties, their homes, their, capital gains, on anything before they can get it out of the country. But by the time they get it out of the country, we're going to have the next fiscal year, we're going to have a massive reduction in tax revenue generated. It's going to be absolutely terrible.
Yeah, no, it happens all the time. They increase the taxes or the tax rate, and the tax they collect goes down. People will do what they're legitimately allowed to do, which they are doing right now, right? Like, people are selling their cottages or talking to their lawyers and putting their cottages in trusts and doing all sorts of things. And I mean, if you bought a cottage and somehow or other you're getting ready to sell it, and your tax bill was going to be $200, but after this new rule, your tax bill could potentially be $275. That's $75,000 extra, man. The people who own those cottages, they'll spend $3,000 on a lawyer to figure out how to save the tax bill. Like, yeah. Hey, speaking of baby boomers, did you see? Everybody's getting on the baby boomer bandwagon. Let's bash the baby boomers, including Marty. Marty's bashed the baby boomers.
Well, you know what? Before you say that, what I think of this whole baby boomer bashing thing, like, I don't object to saying, like, yeah, you didn't have it so hard, whatever, chill out, okay. But the baby boomer bashing is the next round of divide and conquer. If you jump on this bandwagon, you're totally going along with the whole divide and conquer. You might as well get yourself a Palestinian flag, go wave it on the streets, or whatever the dumb cause that today is, right? You might as well go do that, because it's really just divide and conquer tactics. And if you fall for it, you're with them. You're with them in this whole scam. So don't go after your parents and say, Mommy, Daddy, you were so terrible to me.
Great point. And sometimes people perceive me as bashing baby boomers, but I will debate a baby boomer who are I bash them when they start saying, "Oh, we had it hard." That's my battle with them. Like, please acknowledge that you had a pretty good time, right? You lived through the long peace. Interest rates were high for a period, but generally speaking, if you're a baby boomer in this country, please acknowledge that you had a pretty freaking good time. I don't want to bash you if you just acknowledge that. But let's go back to a baby boomer bash baby boomers. Do you have the clip of Elizabeth May? Oh my God, Elizabeth May.
This clip. Okay,
what were
you brought
thinking,
this one up.
Lizzie?
Let me.
But let's spool it up for the viewers. The Green Party in Canada is one of those weird parties that has a dual leadership. They had two leaders, and one of the other leader stepped down without explaining why. And so Liz May went to a press conference to sort of answer questions on why her counterpart stepped down, and this is what she had to say.
Okay, so for the audience there, I try not to keep too much profanity in the show here. She definitely drops an F-bomb in this one, so earmuffs to all those kiddos out there.
I've got another grandbaby coming at the end of October, and I feel very, very committed, as I think everybody my age should. Baby boomers have this planet, and we can't walk away and leave it for our kids to fix it. And I'm sorry I just used the F word out loud, but I think kids understand what I'm saying. I'm a 70-year-old angry, cranky version of Greta Thunberg.
So
that made me laugh, because your question here was agree or disagree. So I replied, I agree that she's a 70-year-old cranky version of Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
All jokes aside, it's been a slow grind towards communism. The boomers led the charge, but other generations have also obliged. Funny thing is, Marxist doctrine break the Marxist doctrine is to break people up into groups and then point blame. So she's definitely doing that. That's what she's doing. But yeah, what's your take on this one?
Well, she says something interesting, which is she's acknowledging that when she says boomers, she's part of the boomers. So she's basically saying the royal we screwed up things. Okay, I'll admit, if that is the case, then you should step aside, because people who screw up something can never be trusted to fix it. That's my golden rule. When somebody says I screwed it up, I'm like, okay, you screwed it up. Step aside and let us clean it. Like, I used to experience this in business all the time. I'd buy a business that was mismanaged. And then when I'd buy that business, it's like, well, the manager's from the other side. It's like, you're gone. It's like, what do you mean we're gone? It's like, well, you mismanaged the business. You sank it. I bought it. So now you're gone because I'm going to save it. So at least she's acknowledging it, but she's not stepping aside. Trudeau, on the other hand, is constantly talking about how screwed up things are, but he's blaming others. And I wish Trudeau would do like Elizabeth May and acknowledge once in a while that, dude, you're the one who screwed it up. Like when he's talking to those youth and saying, times are tougher, housing's unaffordable, interest rates are sky high, inflation is out of control, and immigration is gone berserk. It's like, yeah, I agree. Well, you did all those things.
See, the thing is, so Trudeau should acknowledge that he's messed up, absolutely. But here, when Elizabeth May is saying that she's part of the problem that screwed things up, not only is she misdiagnosing the problems, she's also misdiagnosing the symptoms. She's talking about the environment. She's talking about, Mother Earth, Gaia, and all this other stuff. She's not even worried about the economy. This is the perfect economy for a socialist, for someone who's trying to bring about the watermelon state, the big green on the outside with the commie red inside. Yeah, absolutely. She's misdiagnosing, but she's also not even addressing what the real problem is. It's an economic problem that's been brought on by left-wing ideology. That's what's going on. Well,
and first of all, her generation did do great work, right? Let's acknowledge that. I'll acknowledge that publicly. Like the boomers, in the last 30 years, there's no lead in gasoline anymore. The rivers have been cleaned up. We took up recycling, things like that. They're not perfect, but they the boomers came up with some pretty cool solutions. But what's sad right now is that the environment takes second place. Like, right, you and I know this. Like, if you ask Canadians what their priorities are, putting food on the table, housing yourself, getting your car insured, and getting to work supersedes everything. So, Elizabeth, if you want to protect the environment, the best way to protect the environment is to make sure that Canada is prospering. When we're prospering, then we're all willing to go, yeah, okay, sure, I'll pay the recycling fee on my tires. But when we're struggling, everybody goes, hey, man, like, you know what, that $4 I have to pay on the tires, I'm going to take them to I'm going to leave them in my backyard or I'm going to dump them in the neighborhood somewhere. Like, they missed that whole point, man. Like a prosperous Canada, keep people employed. Your job, man. Help people work, make Canadians prosperous, and then after that, man, we have big, kind hearts, and we'll take care of the environment. But when you put the environment ahead of everything else, dude, I mean, I'm in Alberta right now. We had again this week, 2 days ago, we had a grid alert. Like the grid was, the alarm went out, and the grid was on the verge of collapsing. And it's like you guys have like. Too many ACs on, or what was going on? Too many ACs and too much. Classic. Again, it was the same thing. The wind and solar weren't working, man. Wind and solar weren't working. We shut down.
But it's wind and solar season. It's solar season. You should be getting all the solar.
We were importing power from Montana, and guess what Montana does? Montana buys coal from Alberta, cheaper than producing their own coal. Montana sells their coal to somebody else, then buys our coal for cheap, burns it to make electricity, and then resells us the electricity because our windmills aren't working.
What a deal. What a deal.
Yeah.
What a deal.
Yeah.
And it's the environmentalists who have done this, and they really put the cart before the horse. It's crazy, and not even a good cart. They've taken the crappiest cart that they could build, and because I mean, you mentioned I'd be remiss if I didn't mention or at least rebut you saying that the recycling program is good. Remember what the 3 R's?
Yeah.
Remember the 3
recycle,
R's?
reuse, and
reduce, reuse, and then recycle. We forgot
repair.
the first
I repair
two.
once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't reuse, we don't reduce, we don't reuse anymore. It's all about recycle, and the recycle goes into a blue bin, and you feel happy about it, and then it goes to the same place. If not, it goes on a barge, it gets shipped across the ocean to another place where they have a sort facility, and then a majority of that goes to an incinerator.
Yep.
We should be using technology today. They have incineration technology that they've named all fancy nice names, so it's primed for environmentalists. It's like clean energy recouping or whatever. But this is the concept. We have the technology, we have good technology, but we don't implement it because of idiot policies. We just have idiot policies with idiot people at the helm. And even when we get good people at the helm, they're like, well, I don't know if the people will accept that because they'll say we're burning garbage, that kind of thing.
And our cheap goods, our availability of cheap goods, like our spending on unnecessary stuff outpaces our ability to recycle. I mean, that's the other problem. I mean, how many people do you know are like, actually, one of my boys was talking to somebody the other day. They were driving a 2023 car and they were like, oh, I'd like to upgrade to a 2024. I'm like, wow. Like, yeah. Or phones, right? How many people have like an S11 or an iPhone 11 and they want an iPhone 12 just because? I mean, and so the recycling program for those things can't keep up. But
I do want to throw this out there, though. Japan had a really good idea. So they had one mine that kind of dried up. They ran out of resources, but they had all the infrastructure there. They had a smelter and all this other stuff. And what they ended up doing was converting it to a sort facility for electronic waste. So all the electronic waste, they would even import electronic waste from other places. They revamped how the whole process worked, but they retrofitted the smelter into a smelter for already refined metals and all these different elements to pull it out of silicon chips instead of pulling it out of ore.
Yeah.
So decent things that come about when you see something that's happening in the marketplace, and there's a need for these things. I think it's fascinating. And it wouldn't be allowed in Canada. They wouldn't even be able to retrofit something like that because of the regulatory burden that would be on a facility like that.
Hey, speaking of Japan, I saw your post. So is a bottle of whiskey in Japan, like Canadian rye, is actually that cheap? Like you said, $12. I mean, the conversion seems ridiculous. A bottle of Canadian Club, like $12?
So I'll have to pull up the post here. Let me.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but that like
no, it's all good. I have it here, and I'll put it on the screen, right here. So, whoops, where did we go here?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the.
There we go. So we've got Canadian Club whiskey, $32.15. That's the price at your LCBO in Ontario.
Oh, let's talk about LCBO after this.
Okay, well, this is how I got on this because LCBO is on strike. We'll talk about this after. But I was saying, look at how much we're getting ripped off. Now, if you come over to British Columbia, it's a little bit cheaper at the BC liquor store. I think it was like 28 or something like that. But if you go all the way to the Isle of Japan, there it is for 1380 yen. Now the exchange rate on that makes it just shy of $12. And this is actually, I had people telling me, hey, okay, well, this is actually made in Japan. There's a place that makes it in Japan. That may be true, but we're talking about the same bottle of whiskey, essentially the same bottle of whiskey. But over there, they're paying $12. Now, if you work at a bar or something like that, and you're not going to like the grocery store, which is ultra convenient, the suppliers will sell them for about 800 yen, which is like in at about the $7
So is that because they don't
range,
tax their alcohol, Clyde? Is that why?
Well, they do tax their alcohol. They do tax their alcohol. And I know a lot of people complain about the fact that they tax alcohol in Japan. But yet the prices are still that low. It's just we're so unreasonable here.
And then where do Japanese buy their alcohol? Like, do they have state controlled liquor stores, or is it sold
anywhere you'd like?
You'd like.
So I went on to compare other things because, like, if you go to the United States, it's another one of these. It's you know, here you go. Here's a bigger bottle of the same whiskey for $20. It's instead of 750 milliliters, it's a 1.4 liter bottle. You can't buy the smaller one at Walmart apparently in Sacramento. I was looking.
Yeah, so
this stuff up
$19
'cause
US. That's $25 Canadian, let's say, but that's cheap for a liter and a half. Holy shit!
that's cheap for a liter and a half. But then
Yeah.
you look at here's your average wobbly pops, right? You got your Coors Original, $52.95 in Canada in Ontario at the LCBO for 24 of these. You go to Walmart and you can't buy a 24. They don't have 24s. They have 12, 18s, and 30s, and a 30 pack is $20.
Last time I went to the US, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure there were at the Walmart or whatever, a 6-pack of Coke was more expensive than a 6-pack of Coors. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure soda pop was more expensive than booze. Like,
oh, that's too funny.
yeah,
That's
they have
really
a sugar
funny.
tax, but they don't have an alcohol tax. But
Well,
and
it's crazy to me. It's crazy all of these taxes, like even the sugar tax is crazy for me.
Yeah,
when you know the whole history of it in the United States, but these alcohol taxes have become so egregious. For what? What's the purpose? People say like, oh, we're using the alcohol tax to pay for healthcare and stuff. Well, we have other means of establishing the money for healthcare and all these other things. These are just egregious taxes that the government just keeps adding on and adding on. And as long as nobody revolts over it, nobody's going to do anything about it.
Coincidentally, Clyde, I made a tweet this week where I said gasoline taxes do not go to a special account to repair roads. Like, I can't tell you how many times I hear people say that, oh, I'm happy to pay a gasoline tax that goes to repair potholes. No, folks, gasoline taxes go into the general accounting, general revenue, and there's no special pool of, alcohol taxes goes to healthcare, tobacco taxes go to cancer research, and gasoline taxes go to road repairs. No, folks, they just all go to general revenue, and then the government wastes it. Like,
they mismanage it. That's what they're gonna do.
Absolutely.
They can't trust us to spend our own money on the things that we want to spend it on. So they use taxes to. I mean, what is a sin tax? It's a tax to incentivize you not to do something. Yeah. I mean, I've always compared this because, like, okay, well, if they put taxes on cigarettes and alcohol in order to get you to do less of that,
then a work tax would get you to work less. And
what's income tax do?
Yeah,
what does all this stuff do? Is it all disincentives? Well, at the end of the day, yes, that's the answer. The answer is yes, but it's in a different way. It'll get people to work under the table. It'll get people to skirt paying taxes at all. It'll take people's investments and they'll send it off to another country. They'll take to the Cayman and file it through the Cayman Islands so they don't have to pay taxes in Canada. Yep. They'll start bootlegging some of these items. They're not going to go through the official sources. And what happens when people start bootlegging alcohol? Well, people start getting sick.
I'm glad you said that. There's a boom in bootlegging. Again, it's come back, man. I mean, I see that all the time on Facebook and places like that. Guys are buying stills online, making their own alcohol again, like and getting good at it. Speaking of alcohol, and you mentioned the LCBO 2-3 times now, like they're on strike. Like, think about that. Like, the government controls things, and we can't buy things through the government unless we go through the government, and then the government goes on strike, and then we can't buy it. Like, people in Ontario can't buy alcohol because the government's on strike. Like, it's insane. It's completely insane.
Well, and then what's the answer from the federal government? Doug Ford makes a video explaining how they've made a map for you, an interactive map where you can find all the local breweries that serve beer or cider or wine or any of these things and do off sales that you can purchase.
And then the hypocrisy doesn't stop there. So somebody makes the case that, oh, well, somebody says, solve the problem, privatize the LCBO like they did in most other provinces. And then somebody comes back. They come back and they go, oh, no, it's a profitable crown corporation that makes 20% return on investment. So that corporation that makes more money than Loblaws. So Loblaws makes 3.5%, but the LCBO makes 20%. The LCBO shouldn't be privatized because it's a good money maker for the government. So a government-owned business that sells a consumer good at a huge gross margin, that's good. A private corporation like Loblaws that hires 220,000 employees, pays nearly $1 billion in taxes, and makes a mere
Teeny-weeny
3.5%.
margins.
That's bad. Like, that's how hypocritical they are, man. That's the
Well,
world we live in.
this is the slow creep of socialism, and it really is. I hate to keep harping on this, but this is exactly what that is. And I hate the word privatize. I keep telling people this. Mind when people say the word privatize, because loaded in that word is the assumption that the government ought to run this industry. That is false. It's a false narrative altogether. Privatize, I'd say no. How about
privatize is a starting point. It's not a goal. It should be the starting point, right? So
the starting point should be private. So I'd say let's liberate the industry. Let's liberate the industry from the shackles of government and being gouged by government players and government unions. That's exactly.
No, I like
what's
that.
happening.
I'll catch myself. That's a great point. Privatizing is not a bad thing. It's how it starts. And then when the government takes over, it deprivatizes. So bring it back to being, release it from the shackles of government. I agree. Good point. And by the way, I'm sitting here right now and I'm enjoying a rum and Coke, and I don't want government control, because I know what happens in government control. Then you go to the liquor store and there's one kind of thing. There's like shitty vodka on the shelves in Russia in the 1970s and 1960s. And I like my variety. Right?
I like variety.
Yeah, I like,
and I like being able to get things from all over the place. I don't want to just buy Canadian. I want to be able to buy stuff from South America or from Europe or from wherever I choose, and whatever price markup I want to pay. I don't care. Who cares? It should be up to the consumer. You should be able to buy whatever it is that you want. Now, Canadian products should always have the luxury of having, they'll have less shipping to your location, so they'll have,
they should have an advantage.
Just by the nature of them being closer, they'll have that advantage. So they can either make a bigger markup by selling it for the same price, or have a lower price and have that market strategy. But yeah, I'm full on for competition. I don't even like Canadian cross-border liquor laws, because I think that's absurd. We should be able to buy Alberta alcohol here in British Columbia and have no tariffs or anything like that.
And being pro-capitalism and pro-libertarianism, it comes with pros and cons. People love when you go to here in Alberta, people are bitching about the cost of power, because we have a deregulated free market power system, and so some days you pay more and some days you pay less, and people want it. It's like, well, that's the pros and cons of a free market. Sometimes you pay more. And you sure love your free market when you buy your Pop-Tarts for $3 at Walmart, but then you hate your free market when suddenly your electricity goes to $9.99 instead of $8.99. So ultimately I prefer a free market, and I take the hits once in a while, right? Like the car market, for instance, right now. I mean, there's a shortage of cars, and we're paying dearly for new cars. So, and what do you do in a free market? Delay your spending. Don't go to Loblaws. Yeah. Don't delay buying your new car until a couple of years from now when the market adjusts itself, and then buy a car then. That's it.
And and if you need to, then you have to spend that coin. It's just the way it goes. It is just the way it goes. But at the end of the day, the markets have a better way of deciding these things than a central authority. There is no algorithm that a computer can write to figure out where the markets are going to go and why things need to be allocated in certain ways. The supply and demand curve has always been the thing. This has always been the problem with the idea of central authorities, whether it's the Bolsheviks or it's the Red Guard or whatever they called themselves in China. They could not predict these things, and this is why their systems fell apart so terribly.
What's your thoughts on what happened in Europe this week? Did you see the election in France?
I've been waiting for somebody to explain it to me. I haven't. I've been paying attention to other things. I heard about England going from one WEF guy to another WEF guy.
Oh,
so it's just pass the wrecking ball kind of thing. Like, here you go. You were destroying it. Now you're going to destroy it.
England's
what happened in
interesting
France?
because England's interesting because they go through God, how many prime ministers have they had? England's probably had 6 prime ministers in the last decade, so they keep recycling them until they'll find a good one. So
wasn't it really a condemnation of the Tories for not being conservative, or because I see that there's a bunch more support for the Reform Party. It was Nigel Ferguson, or I'd be talking out of step if I said that
I'm not as familiar with what happened in England, but France had a situation like Macron. When you think of Macron, Emmanuel Macron, he's very similar to Trudeau. He is a WEF guy. He's a young upcoming leader. He's been in power almost the same amount of time as Trudeau, and he did the same thing as Trudeau did. He started seeing his popularity going down in the polls, so he called a snap election. That's what he did. He called a snap election, thought, I'm going to capitalize on this. He won the election. Sure, he won by a very slim margin, but the parties on the left, which he's part of, they organized. They realized they better form a quick coalition to prevent the right from winning. And what the parties did there, it'd be like the NDP suddenly dropping candidates. So they quickly negotiated, and wherever they were fearful of splitting the vote, the left parties dropped candidates to make sure that there was no vote splitting. So it just showed what's possible. So he won. The left won. No, he didn't win. He did win. He got the most seats. But it's a minority, and but it created a scary situation now in France. He the pundits at the end of the day are saying he didn't win. He's got a minority now, and he awoke a giant, and now he's got this. And now France has this huge, 6 parties are sharing the Senate or whatever they call it over there. So they're going to be in a stalemate.
So he's coalesced with a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, so they're going to be in a stalemate. He won, but they're going to be in a stalemate. He won't be able to do shit. Yeah. What's the meme?
I did see this meme. I thought it was pretty funny. It's the the vote says they're coming in being tallied.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, but yeah, that one cracked me up.
So and we're close to that. I mean, I do like the American. I do like the 2-party system. I kind of like the 2-party system. The 3-party, 4-party, 5-party, 6 parties. That makes me nervous because especially in our system of first past the post. Like technically, when you got 5 candidates, somebody with 21% of the vote wins the seat, and that just scares me. I mean, I don't like that. So yeah, so that's what happened in France.
So I got one other story I wanted to throw in here. I think we didn't mention this before we went on, but I'll pop this on here really quick. Consultant was charged with fraud, accused of overbilling Ottawa $250,000, and this is actually something I want to see more of. I want to see a lot more of, because this is obviously what we've been largely complaining about. The fact that there's so much, not just fraud, but egregious fraud happening in Ottawa all the time. So this Clara Elaine Vesser is accused of submitting fraudulent timesheets to the tune of $250,000 over the period of a year. So like, this is giving yourself an extra $250,000 paycheck over the course of a year. Who knows how much else was embezzled? But this is something it seems to be routine in Ottawa. I don't know what triggered this particular investigation.
I think it's routine. First of all, I think it's routine. Some consultant submits his $25,000 invoice. Nobody checks it. It should have been $20,000, and there's an extra $5,000. I think it's routine. This story stinks. I think it's just somebody being thrown under the bus to make it look like they're doing something. Because I think that this is such a small tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's, just Arrive scam alone was, a $60 million boondoggle similar to this, right? Like GC Industries or whatever they were called, billing the government for $250 million in the last 10 years. So I think this poor girl is she's not even a victim. I swear to God, I bet you she made $3-4 million. They caught her on a couple of charges. If she doesn't go to jail, then for her, it's a small penalty to pay for the fact that she's embezzling millions on the backside, and then all the other guys that are doing the same thing go, all right, we got, one girl got sacrificed, throw her a cookie behind the scene, it's all good. If she goes to jail for something like that, then that's real. Then that should send a signal to the others. So we'll see. But I think this one is just right now, this one doesn't pass my sniff test. I think she's just being, offered up so that the RCMP look like they're doing something.
So there's a line in this article. Make sure you're not drinking your rum and Coke. I wanted to point out. So Guillaume Bertrand, I think that's how you Bertrand. A spokesperson for Procurement Minister Jean-Yves Duclos said in a separate statement that protecting taxpayer money is crucial to ensure responsible and transparent governance. I just wanted to make sure you weren't.
Yeah. Thanks for warning me. Yeah.
When you heard that, but yeah, this is one of those things. Actually, what you said kind of makes sense to me now when I read something like that. It's a hey, look, nothing to see here. We're taking care of all the embezzlement.
Our control systems work, and whenever something like this happens, you don't need to worry about it. She got caught, and so will everybody else who does this. No, I think
which is not the case.
No, I mean it reminds me of the collapse of the big banks and the mortgage companies in the US there in 2008, that big crisis. Like, they always laughed at it because at the end of the day, when the whole crisis was over, one banker somewhere like sitting in his corner office got sacrificed and had to pay like a $60,000 fine. Meanwhile, Larry over there embezzled the bank for whatever, $300 million. So no, she just wasn't part of the circle, and she got pinched. And it's not even a real pinch. I swear to God, I'm sure that somebody was like, yeah, take the fall, and then you'll be compensated. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately the case. It just struck me because I saw it on the headlines, and I thought I should bring this one up. I should definitely bring this one up. But moving forward, I know we're going to have some fantastic weather. I know you've been having fantastic weather out there in Calgary with the Stampede going on. Perfect conditions for no Trudeau showing up. Perfect conditions for no Jagmeet Singh showing up. Unfortunately, we got
Chrystia Freeland showed up. We got Randy Boissonneau. My God, they showed up as a couple almost. Like what an odd couple. But Poilievre showed up. Poilievre had a really good stampede. Like he had a really good stampede. I mean, I didn't go. I avoid the. There's three kinds of people at Stampede. There's the Calgarians who live in Calgary and love to go to the Stampede. There's the out-of-towners who come to Calgary for the Stampede, and then there's the Calgarians who get the hell out. So I'm in the get the hell out category right now. But so I've been watching the Stampede from a distance. But Poilievre had a huge turnout. They broke out into "O Canada." His wife got on stage. He's scoring big. I mean, his rallies. It's not even a rally. He just literally showed up for a Stampede breakfast, and there must have been, an easy 2,000-3,000 people. So he's pulling in big, giant crowds. On the flip side, did you see the picture of Trudeau, like getting on the plane to go to Washington for the NATO summit? And it's classic, right? He turns around and he waves, and then there's one of the journalists like standing a kilometer away going, who's he waving at? Like, there's nobody here.
I did see the long shot.
Yeah.
It was pretty embarrassing to say the least. But the weather's been ramping up. We're actually getting a summer this year. It's happening despite what you might be hearing on the news.
Is your temperature charts on the news? Are you guys red, yellow, or have you gone to purple or black or whatever comes after red?
Funny part is on my phone I constantly keep track of the weather, and I'm constantly keeping track of my new home when I eventually get to move there near Austin, and looking at the weather. And our weather's been, I want to say, they're predicting 32 degrees on the average day, which isn't that hot. It's not really that hot, but we have this heat warning. And then in Austin, they're having 35, 37, and there's no heat warning at all. It's I guess people are different, different circumstances for different
Yeah,
There's
like
different
the
strokes for different folks,
when
whatever you want to call
when
that.
CTV puts up a map of Alberta this morning, it was red, and like not just a little bit red, like the whole map was like Dante's Inferno. I mean, Alberta looked red. Like if you're touching it, you're gonna die. And yeah, we're
Oh,
fine.
it's
Speaking of
ridiculous.
yeah, actually, speaking of where you're going in the Americans, there was another fatality in Death Valley. I saw that on a story today. People go to Death Valley, right? It's a place in California that's like below sea level, and it gets really hot, like 50 degrees. And
Tell me,
people,
why didn't they call it Slumbers and Sunshine and
Yeah.
beautiful
And
trots and
yeah, and there's a
and-
digital thermometer there, and people want to go there next to the thermometer and have their picture taken saying I was in 50-degree weather. Well, man, if you're in 50-degree weather and your car fails or breaks down, you're gonna
done.
die quickly, man. Like it's not a joke. And they keep warning people, like, don't do this. Like, don't, but
Don't go.
Humans, the gene pool is getting shallower. Like
It's getting shallower all the time.
on Death Valley, it's evaporated completely.
Or sometimes
Hey.
we talk about death valleys even though they're not even occurring. So here's Stephen Guibault jumping in there saying, results are in. June heat waves in central and eastern Canada were 7 to 10 degrees above averages due to climate change. Obviously, he's getting giddy here. This guy is giddy at the thought of an environmental disaster, so much so that he's celebrating skewed numbers based on compromised weather stations. The reality is there has been and will not be a catastrophe despite his blatant misanthropic dreams of fire and brimstone. I'm really just kind of done with this guy. He keeps hoping for a disaster. You think that a guy who's the Minister of Environment and Climate Change in Canada would hope to be averting it? He's never happy when it doesn't go towards disaster. He seems excited when it's going towards disaster. It feels a bit like, trusting the shaman at the temple with the Aztecs as you're walking up there and he's holding a knife. You're like, I'm hoping that you don't get me. He's hoping for it. He's hoping that you're coming for the sacrifice. It's unbelievable.
People aren't listening to them. I mean, the other one this week was, well, you mentioned when we were talking about Liz May, you mentioned Greta Thunberg or whatever, and Greta got arrested again in Europe. And then people are like, come on, give us a break, right? I mean, the cops are holding her, they're dragging her, and then they stop. And then
she's not even talking about climate change anymore. She's
they put her down. She turned to the cameras. Everybody takes pictures, and then the cops start dragging her away again. I mean, like when the cops arrest you for real, they don't pause so you can take pictures with the paparazzi.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
No,
Hey,
they don't.
I know you wanted to talk about this, and you just talked about you going to the U.S. and you're allowed to go to the U.S. because you're a dual citizenship. And I don't know if it was in reference to the fact that I made this poll. I don't know if you saw my poll, but not a rant, but I made a Twitter poll, or not I made a Twitter poll, but I also made a comment. I don't think
I didn't see the poll, but I saw the comment. I saw the comment, and I have it here. You shouldn't be allowed to be a politician if you have dual citizenship. It's a clear conflict of interest. I go even further and not allow dual citizens in Canada, period. Why do people hold two citizenships? Because it provides additional benefits from another country, which is by definition a conflict of interest. Canadians with dual citizenship are conflicted. Am I conflicted, Marty?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm conflicted. The reality of the situation is because of my predicament, if I don't claim my dual citizenship, it's just up for grabs. And even if I relinquished citizenship, I'd always be able to get it back. So having it is kind of like it's a non sequitur. Like as long as I'm eligible for it, I can always get it. And that's always the thing. Say I said, okay, you're right, I'm going to leave Canada and I'm not going to be a Canadian citizen. Well, I'll always have that birth certificate, a record of me being born here, and then I'll always be able to get it back. So it's not even something within my control at a point.
Yeah.
If I have an opportunity to go somewhere else, I mean, that's we all.
When I made that comment, and I think that was today or yesterday, actually, people were pretty universal with the first part of my comment, which is, dual citizenship shouldn't be allowed to be in high powers like in federal government, because that is a clear conflict of interest. I mean, if you live in, if you're, so people were aligned with that. The other one was more interesting, and then I researched it into a little bit. There are two across the globe, there's two broad categories of citizenship. Half the countries in the world have citizenship by blood. So regardless, so if you're born from whatever Norwegian parents, then you're Norwegian regardless of where you live. And then the other half of the countries in the world have citizenship by place of birth. So Canada is generally a citizenship by place of birth, but we have a lot of people who come here who have come from places that recognize citizenship by blood. So we're a mix. So
and I happen to be a mix of both of those types. Because I have citizenship through blood in the United States, that's where my citizenship comes from there, and I was born in Canada. So I'll always be eligible for citizenship in Canada, even if I were to relinquish it.
Exactly. So the second part of my comment is a little harder to make into a reality. So yes, you're what did I say? You should give up a citizenship. I appreciate that can't be done because of the way the laws of the world work. But I stand by my first one. I mean, I especially lately, I've watched some of the politicians that we've elected. We seem to elect a lot of people that come from another country, that were born elsewhere, come here and don't really have Canada's best interests at heart. And then people will say, well, that could be also for a Canadian citizen. I'm like, yeah, it could be, but anyways, I'm on Twitter and I'm putting out thoughts there to solicit.
So there's a flip side of that coin, and this doesn't go again with the dual citizenship thing, but it does go with someone comes from another country and then wants to run for office here. I can't think of a specific example here in Canada, but there's a lovely lady in America who I think she has a congressional seat, and I think it's a congressional seat. I'll have to look it up because I follow her on Twitter. But she's from China originally, and I think she's relinquished her citizenship there. But she's very, very much against communism, and she's very opposed to it. And she's an advocate for stopping and thwarting any efforts for socialists to be bringing that up in America since she's left it. And I think the same would go for anyone who comes from, any of the Soviet countries that's moved over here over time and remembers what it was like to live under the Soviet bloc and has run for office in Canada, that kind of thing. I welcome that. I welcome those people because they understand much better than softies that live through nothing but good times and talk about the fair weather socialists that come over here and bring bad ideas to our government. So it's a bit of give and take there.
Yeah, speaking of people from the Eastern Bloc, did you ever have Kurt on your show? I thought I tried to introduce you to Kurt, a buddy from Calgary, from the Behind the Iron Curtain. We'll talk about that offline, but
we'll have to.
I have a lot of good friends that I call them from behind the Iron Curtains, from Poland pre-revolution and places like that. And yeah, man, like they're great to talk to because yes, they don't want to see communism anymore. They know what it's like to wait in line for bread. They know what it's like to drink one kind of vodka and drive a shitty car. And they were the canaries in the coal mine, and we ignored them. A lot of those people looked at what was happening in Canada, and they're like Kurt's one of my buddies. He's shaking his head all the time. He's like, I don't understand why you
some of them are on the road to recovery, those countries. I mean, look at Poland, look at some of these other countries that used to be part of the Soviet bloc. They're not buying into what's happening in Europe. They're not buying into a lot of these things. And yeah, they may not be super wealthy countries now, but we didn't start off as a super wealthy country. We started off as a colony of, people. And then,
remember that poll that I showed you about, 2 months ago, the happiness index that the guys have been measuring, and it showed that our youth were unhappy and Polish youth, Croatians, Slovaks are super happy, man. The countries that were communist 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and have finally moved beyond that, their youth are absolutely ecstatic. Like they're loving life. Whereas our youth are off to a bad start. Yeah, and you know who's happy in Canada? Boomers. Yeah, I don't want happy boomers. Let's make the boomers unhappy. And I'm not a boomer, folks. Everybody always says, Marty, you're a boomer. I'm not a boomer. I was born in 1967. I'm not a boomer. So
fair enough. I'm at the beginning
yeah.
of the millennial generation, so I can't even relate with the Gen Xers.
Marty,
Anyway, Marty,
I think we covered everything, right?
Where can people find you?
Sweating my... No, I was going to say something bad. Sweating in my backyard. No, on Twitter, Marty Up North _2 on Twitter. Find me, folks. Actually, I did a nice little survey today on Twitter. I asked people, just a quick comment on Twitter. I'm always trying to curate my followers and my timeline. I want to engage with real people. I'm trying to get rid of robots. I'm trying to get rid of advertising, and I want people with a different opinion.
And idiot radicals. There are
idiot radicals. I don't want
them.
I really want people. I'd love to have more people with a different opinion, as long as we're capable of, engaging. It doesn't even have to be completely polite, but at least we have to engage without being morons. But find me on Twitter as Marty Up North, and please engage with me. I'm trying to, that's what I'm there for. It's to engage. I love that platform for that. Instant feedback.
I've actually started doing a lot more engagement, a lot less of just like the, posting what my content is, and starting to use Twitter. I don't tweet nearly as much as you do, but trying to get on the ball with it. So you'll see me there more a little bit too, but definitely check out Marty Up North on Twitter. He's on there all day. If you leave a comment with Marty, he probably sees it. So get on there anyway.
Yeah, Marty was painting his daughter's apartment today, and then between cans of paint, he was stopping after every gallon of paint. I would stop for a beer and some tweets.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, folks. Cheers, everyone. See you next week, Clyde.